as a translator for about a decade. Would you say that you have developed your own style?
The idea of a translator developing his own style is antithetical to the whole idea of translation. A translator is supposed to be listening for the voice that is in the text, which is not, by definition, his voice or her voice. So if I've developed a style of my own, it would only be through trying to reflect the text as closely as possible, which I hope that people would see as a marker of my work, as of any other good translation, and which, in fact, some critics have remarked on. But I don't see that as being my own style, but rather an attempt to get close to the style of the author.
Is that what a good translation is, to really echo?
I would think that that's the essence of a good translation. That you make the reader feel that they are hearing a voice that is distinctive. And just being said that one of the problems with translation, I don't know translation from Arabic more than any other language, but it's been said of Arabic that one of the problems is that it often all sounds the same. And of course it shouldn't, and that's the last thing, that it should sound the same, because these authors don't read the same. They all read incredibly differently from one another, or at least the good ones do. The bad ones all read the same, yeah, but the good ones read differently.
Is it truly possible to mirror exactly the style of the author?
There is nothing identical, because if it were identical, it would be the original text, but you have put it into another language, so it can't be identical. But I like the idea of mirrors and reflecting, because what you see in a mirror is not identical. It's subtly changed somehow, but at the same time it's recognizable. And that, I guess, is a very good metaphor for what the translator tries to do.
Did you ever struggle with a particular passage or word in the Arabic text that you ultimately felt could not be appropriately translated because English is not as rich as Arabic?
That's a concept which I don't agree with. I don't believe that any language is richer or poorer than any other language. People often say that, especially of Arabic, and they refer to phenomena such as Arabic having a huge vocabulary. It doesn't forget, in the sense that people have been recording it. Lexicographers have been writing down the words of this Arabic, and those words are forever available. You can dip into the vast resources of Arabic as a language. The fact is, however, that people don't know more than in any other language, I think, that what is recorded is not nearly as important as what is used, which is a far smaller amount of vocabulary. And the richness of a language in terms of quantity of recorded vocabulary items is a very primitive notion. What makes a language rich is only how people use it. And when you have great writers in Swedish, Japanese, or Arabic, they're all essentially doing the same thing. The fact that you have dictionaries of Arabic that go back to the 14th century and earlier does not probably translate into better writing in Arabic in the 21st century. The world is one. It's pretty much impossible to suppose that there are ideas that one human being can have that another human being cannot understand or could not themselves have. The only thing that I think poses insuperable problems, sometimes insuperable problems for a translator, probably in any language, are puns. Because if your language the language into which you're translating doesn't happen to have anything any pair of words that could complement one another, or any one word that would have two meanings that would echo the language of the pun used in the original, then you're in trouble. And sometimes you lose something. Sometimes you find surprising possibilities, even between languages as distinct as Arabic and English, distinct in their vocabulary and their basic linguistic composition. And I regard this simply as a gift of fate.
How do you tackle the cultural context? Say, for example, when it comes to things like sayings or metaphors or expressions, proverbs that are so typically Arabic.
I think that the first principle is that whatever is to think about what is the function of the phrase or the metaphor or the proverb, and if you can carry over that function by using something which may be formally quite different but which has exactly the same impact in English, then that's, you've achieved the goal. I don't believe in translations which slavishly follow the imagery of the original. I don't think that's necessary, and in fact I think it can be distracting and can hold the reader up while he wonders what might that mean. Sometimes you can do both. I mean, you can keep with the Arabic and with something that models the Arabic fairly closely, but which conveys the meaning well enough because the context perhaps is sufficient. What it comes down to often, the words that are most fiddly sometimes are the culturally specific physical items. It may be important to understand what is meant by a water pipe, or in the sense of the pipe that you smoke, where the smoke goes through the water, and why a goza, for example, is different from a shisha, because the goza, which is handheld and which is much cheaper, implies a different social context. Publishers don't like footnotes, mostly. I don't know if that's right or wrong. I think that's a cultural thing. Arabic translations, I'm told, I haven't read enough to say this off my own bat, but I'm told that Arabic translations of, for example, Russian novels are stuffed with footnotes. Everything's explained, and some readers appreciate that very much. But the convention in English language publishing is that footnotes are a bad thing. Nicer publishers will allow you to do a glossary, which can take care of a lot of these items if somebody really wants to know.
Would you say that most translators of Arabic literature face difficulties with punctuation?
Punctuation, yes, because I'm not sure that there is a single agreed upon system of punctuation for Arabic. Now, there isn't a totally agreed on system of punctuation for English either. But we do have our Chicago Manual of Style and that kind of thing. As far as I know, there is no equivalent of a Chicago Manual of Style for Arabic punctuation. And I think that it can be a little confusing to find the comma, for example, used where one would use a full stop. And some, let's just say there's a wide variation in the way in which Arabic writers use punctuation. And that is a real technical issue that you have to think about when you're translating.
How much have Arabic novels changed since you started translating?
Since I started translating is not that long ago, so it's 10 years. Over a 10-year period, I'm sure there are trends which the literary critic will have observed and could speak to. I'm not sure that I have a broad enough overview of Arabic literature across all countries. This is something that actually being a member of the jury for the Naguib Mahfouz Prize is actually very helpful with, because it gives me the opportunity to and provides me with some of the best works written from Morocco to Iraq. One thing I've noticed recently is a very dark, one might almost call it Gothic, theme in a number of Arabic novels. Some of them Egyptian, but not all of them Egyptian. An imaginative, a sort of an imagination that, to put it in English terms, might have a little of the Edgar Allan Poe with a little of the Arthur C. Clarke about it, you know, and this is, I've read several recent, 2 or 3 or 4 recent books that fit within that category. I think it's been a period, the last 10 years, and maybe a few years before that, counterintuitively, it's actually been a period of fluorescence and growth and elan and energy for Arabic literature. And not surprisingly, then you see people sort of going off in all directions. And there have been lots of different experiments and different styles and very, very distinctive things like Ahmed Aidi, for example. And with him, a number of other very promising young writers such as Mohammed Alaa Ingil Adam, and a slew of other novels that he's written in the last 10 years. Something that might very broadly be called shababi, but that's a very inadequate term. All it means that these are written by young people. So there are lots of people. You have other young and up-and-coming novelists like el-Gazzar who are writing in a very different style, which is also very authentic and has its very own voice. So I think that it's a time of ferment, perhaps, in Arabic literature, which is excellent for me and for everybody else.
How do you go about picking what you're going to translate? And do you have a preference?
I'm very eclectic in my tastes, and there are books written in very different modes which appeal to me greatly. And you can find another book which would be superficially similar to a book that I like very much, and I say, no, I do not want to translate this book. In fact, I don't even want to read it. I mean, after the first 20 pages or something. I'm very much at essence, a 20-page reader. If I'm not into it after 20 pages, I toss it. That said, it's not always me that picks them. That mechanism always works, but books are often suggested to me by translators, by publishers. And that becomes more and more, that has become more and more the case as I've become better known, I suppose. So I get people writing to me and saying, you're interested in this, I'm interested in that. And then, so the range of books from which I'm choosing becomes limited to that, because one doesn't have an infinite amount of time. Again, fortunately, the Naguib Mahfouz Prize, for example, is making me read outside of that gamut of books, and that's good. I'm discovering some wonderful things. If I were to characterize what I like, it would be, and what it is that gives me that frisson of, yes, this is good. When you look at it from a distance, perhaps, with a little bit more detachment, I really don't like books that are traditional. I don't like it when I feel, sometimes you read a book, in fact, usually you read a book and you feel this person is going through the motions of being a writer because for whatever reason they believe they need to be a writer, but they don't actually have an individual vision. And with that, having of an individual vision and authenticity comes a lack of traditionalness, very often in form, though not necessarily, but very often in form, in the way that the novel is actually constructed and put together. And the sort of language that is used, the way that language is used, and everything is all of one piece, and it goes together. So, by and large, you could say I like new stuff, non-traditional stuff. Now, it may sound odd to say that Ahmed Faris Shidyak in his book As-Saq ala Saq, Leg Over Leg, is absolutely a brand new book with a very, very authentic individual vision, extreme experimentation in form, and it was written in 1855.
Never translated before.
And never translated before into English. There is a translation of a sort into French, but it never had been translated into English. And the reasons, one of the reasons that is given for that is that it's very hard. Well, in the sense it is, but I think that if the people who had looked at it and said, oh, that's too hard, I don't want to translate it, had soldiered on, they probably would have found that it's not as hard as it might seem. First of all, the guy, when he wants to write clear, lucid, unmistakable prose, when it suits his purposes, he does so, and could not be clearer. When he wants to play, he plays, and then you have to play with him.
It almost seems like translating for you is a challenge, and that you kind of like to take on this challenge and see if you can figure out what the author, how to translate, how to deliver the message into English. Is that, do you see that as
You could say it's a challenge, you could say it's a game. I think I translate in order to understand, because I don't think anybody reads the text as closely as a translator. And to really squeeze the goodness out of the text is something that I like to do. And actually, I wouldn't say that's why I translate, but well, I mean, not on the sort of making money level, but as one of the factors that goes into why I enjoy translation or why I find it so fascinating is that it gives you this, you have before you this text, and you want to preferably, ideally, completely understand what the writer was doing here, what he or she was trying to convey, and how they tried to convey it, and in what mode, and with what implications, and so on and so forth.
What is the nicest thing that somebody's ever told you as a translator?
When I got the Banipal Prize for Yalo by Elias Khoury, and the co-runner-up prize in the same year for Sunset Oasis by Bahaa Taher, more than one of the jury said that one of the reasons for giving the prize to the same person twice over was because the translations were so different. This business of voice, and they used that term, and they said that I had managed to convey the difference between the in fact, huge difference between those two writers and the way they write, and that was something that they liked. And that's the nicest thing I think that has been said about my translation.